Hey everybody, Plushie here. Hope you guys are enjoying the current summer event, and of course the very exciting Summer Fahrenheit banner is coming up soon as well. But today's topic is going to be on the spotlight of the first summer banner, Summer Castoria. Does she live up to the name of literally being the summer version of the most broken character in the entire game, or is she actually kind of a letdown? Without further ado, let's find out in today's hot take video on Summer Castoria. Summer Castoria's first skill is a 50 MP battery, but it also comes with a 50% crit up for 3 turns, as well as a 5000% star absorb up for 3 turns as well, all on a 6 turn cooldown. So you know this character is strong if this is the first skill that we're starting off of. 50% MP battery is always good, super flexible, good for farming, good for challenge quests. It basically gives her a free 50 MP start CE. We've talked to death about this, everybody likes 50 MP batteries. But on top of that, it also comes with a 50% crit up for 3 turns, as well as a 5000% star absorb up for 3 turns. This is the god combo for all crit servants. The critical damage number is not scuffed at all, despite being in a compound effect on a 6 turn cooldown, and the 5000% star absorb up basically allows her to get every single star on the field despite being a berserker. So overall, this is a super powerful skill. In my opinion, one of the strongest 50 MP battery skills in the entire game already, and there are even more broken skills to come. Summer Castoria's second skill is a targetable 20% MP battery that also overcharges the target by 2 stages for 1 time 3 turns, and finally it gives the entire party 3 turns of 20% MP gain up, all on a 6 turn cooldown. So this is essentially normal Castoria's second skill, but with the added effect of the overcharge and in trade-off extending its cooldown by 1. This is obviously also a super powerful character. The overcharge, obviously, depending on who you pair her with, can be very useful, but by default, you would want to pair her with normal Castoria because she's a Arch Servant DPS, and this obviously would help normal Castoria gain her solemn defense stacks very efficiently. This obviously also does what normal Castoria's skill 2 does, and it helps the entire team's refund if you want to run her in a multi-core farming setup, or in general, it just helps the entire team get their MP back. And of course, the 20 MP battery is also super flexible for multi-core farming, or, just for herself, and making her have a total of 70% self MP charge that is split into 2 parts, which is super powerful in farming in 90++. So overall, once again, a super good skill. And finally, her third skill is a 3 turn 50% arts up, a 3 turn star gem per turn effect that gives her 10 stars every single turn, and finally it gives her a 1 turn invul. Now once again, this is a remix of normal Castoria's skill 3, but it trades the targetable effect as well as the anti-threat to humanity for a 10 star per turn effect for 3 turns. Now this is a super solid skill once again. The 20-30 effect pairs super well with her first skill, essentially giving Castoria an entire bread and butter critical kit all on herself. She can supply herself with the stars, the crit ups, and the star absorb up. You don't need to pair any other crit supports with her for her to function well as a crit damage dealer. This obviously also is a whopping 3 turn 50% arts up that boosts both her refund because she is an art servant, as well as her damage more importantly. And finally, it is tied to an invul, and usually people will give this crap for tying her main damage boost to a survival skill, but that is literally grasping at straws, because even if you remove that invul, this would still already be a pretty decent skill. And just having this invul on a berserker, tank a free hit, and it's usually pretty good. Or you can use it as a survival skill when you're soloing with her. And as a Arch Servant, if you're running her with the other Castorias, you are probably never out of hard defense anyways. So overall, still one of the most solid skills in the game. And now let's look at her passives. She has Madness Enhancement A, which increases her buster up by 10%, which is kind of okay because she has 2 buster cards. and she also has magic resistance B, which is a pretty decent number, I would say. These are always kind of hit or miss depending on your luck. She also has item construction E, which increases her own debuff success rate by 2%, which is basically a non-effect. And finally, she has Fey Eyes question mark that increases her own critical damage chance resistance by 20%, which is actually really relevant because her MP, spoiler alert, has another crit chance down on the enemy, and when you combine these two effects together, she actually can ward off a lot of critical hits, which is really important for the survival for a Berserker servant especially. Finally, her MP is a single target 6 hits Arts MP that gives the entire team 1 turn 1 times Solemn Defense whenever she MPs. Wow, on a loopable single target Arts MP as well? It's kind of ridiculous. And it also deals 150% extra damage against threat to humanity enemies. Now, this is a trait that is relatively common in main story bosses, however, it is quite rare among servants that will appear in most 90++ farming nodes, as well as challenge quests, and when they are on servants, they're usually on Foreigner class servants, which obviously Castoria deals half damage to, but this might not be a minus as we will see in a bit. And finally, this reduces the target's critical chance by 20% for 3 turns, meaning this is a stackable effect, and it also stacks with her Fairy Eyes passive. So what this means is that whenever you MP a couple times on the enemy, you basically shut down their ability to crit. Pair this with the fact that she can give the entire team 1 hit of Solemn Defense whenever she MPs, which very often when you're fighting a boss, you will be MPing like back to back to back. She's gonna protect the entire team very well from any form of stray hits, if they even get to touch one of your teammates. And finally, the overcharge effect of this character is 2 anti-traits that are in the form of power mods, which obviously activates before the MP, and it also applies to the face cards after she MPs on that specific turn. That is anti-chaotic as well as anti-divine, both skills from 50% all the way up to 100%. Both chaotic and divine are extremely common traits, which gives her extreme coverage no matter if she's fighting against bosses or if she's fighting against 90++ farming nodes. And both of these traits are also super common, specifically on Foreigner servants. Basically, most of them are divine because they are vessels of an outer god, and a lot of them are chaotic evil. So when you combine these 2 anti-traits, which is plus 100%, and the 150% extra damage against threat to humanity, you get a 3 times extra damage against these Foreigner servants. And despite that damage being cut in half because of the class disadvantage, you're still doing 1.5 times damage to these Foreigner servants, which is more than if you were to use a servant that doesn't have, any anti-trait against them and also does neutral class damage. This insane combination of anti-traits actually allows this Berserker to do effective damage against Foreigners. This is quite ridiculous. Obviously, this MP also provides extreme survivability with the Solemn Defense as well as the stackable crit down. Overall, insane MP. So how do I feel about Summer Castoria? Well, if I haven't made it obvious enough, I think she's pretty busted, but of course, as usual, we will still look at her performances in both farming and challenge quests. A gripe that a lot of people have with Castoria in farming is her lackluster refund, and it is true. She has a 6-hit MP with only a 0.4% MP gain per hit, making her fall behind her other peers such as Draco, Vlad, and Galatea. This problem especially is exemplified when you are running a singular damage dealer team, for example double Castoria plug Oberon. Her looping really isn't the best compared to her other peers. However, is this comparison really relevant? I don't think so. I think 111 nodes in farming specifically are such few and far between occasions that this is not really a reflection of most of the times when you are using a character. Instead, you should be considering their ability to slot into a multi-core farming team. And in that aspect, Summer Castoria pulls ahead of most of her other competition because of her massive amounts of MP charge. She has a self 50 MP battery as well as a targetable 20 MP battery. And the targetable 20 MP battery is also a buff. It gives the entire team a looping refund buff, which helps both her and her teammate, and also it gives the target a 2-stage overcharge. Overcharge can range from super useful to absolutely useless, and at the very least it can boost her own damage if she is hitting trait. Obviously this can also boost her teammates damage if they're hitting trait. And of course, there are certain characters that work super well with overcharge that sometimes even require overcharge boost effects to allow them to function in multi-core farming, namely the recent Tonalico, who super needs a overcharge boost from one of her teammates, and Castoria can obviously supply her with that. But not just Tonalico, characters such as Koyan Light also gains 10 extra MP whenever she MPs, that she can give to the entire team if she is overcharge boosted. So there are obviously a lot more situations where this targetable 20 MP battery can help the teammates with the overcharge, but even if we disregard that, this is still a super flexible effect that, you know, you can decide whether to use on herself or on her teammate. Having this semi-support effect on a already powerful DPS is exactly what you want in multi-core farming. Castoria also has extremely wide coverage with her double anti-trait MP, hitting both divine and chaotic enemies, which are both relatively common traits. Although her damage isn't the best when she isn't hitting either trait, her damage suddenly skyrockets above most of her other competitions as long as she hits one of them, and hitting both of them are not really that rare either, and when she hits both of them, obviously her damage is going to be super high, higher than most other options you can find in the entire game. Overall, I think Summer Castoria just is such a flexible character. She's self-sufficient, she can help the team, she has a lot of MP charge, and overall just a perfect pick as a multi-core farmer. And once again, a little thing to mention, as I've said before when talking about her MP, if you do invest, you know, some MP levels or grails into her, she can brute force through foreigner enemies because of her triple anti-trait usually hitting all of them against a foreigner servant during 90++ farming. So overall, she's like one of the best single target options you can use in multi-core farming during 90++ nodes. And even if you do want to brute force her against a 1-1-1 node as the singular damage dealer, you can usually still do that. Add on the fact that she's also a really good critical servant who can supply herself with stars, star absorb, and critical damage up. You might even be able to crit one of the waves or something. So overall, I just think she's such a self-sufficient character that you can throw her in any farming team and she will be the premium single target that will deal with a lot of your problems. But believe it or not, I don't even think farming is Summer Castoria's strongest abilities. In my personal opinion, Summer Castoria might actually be, in general, the best single target boss killer in the entire game, granted if you run her with the typical arts meta supports. Summer Castoria has the very good quality of being able to deal massive damage to the enemy at the same time as providing the entire team with very good survivability. A huge predicament I usually run into when running these kinds of teams is whether I focus on looping my main damage dealer's MP to try to take out the enemy as fast as possible, or I slow down my pace and chain their MP with my support's arts cards instead and try to get their MP to help my team survive. Now I no longer have to worry about that problem if I'm running Summer Castoria. Remember, the enemies only have 3 actions every single turn in most cases, and unless you're doing AoE attacks with every single attack they do, this one-time one-turn psalm defense on the entire team usually will absorb 2 hits from the enemy. Do remember that Summer Castoria can loop her MP extremely easily against a boss because 1, she might take hits from the boss, and 2, she can easily use a face card to make up for the lack of refund. So overall, your team just barely gets touched already if you're able to loop Summer Castoria's MP back to back to back, and even if your team gets touched, that MP also applies a 20% crit down, and that chance can stack all the way up to 60% if you do it back to back 3 times, which is not hard at all. Whenever your team actually gets unlucky and gets focus fired and one of your teammates gets hit, their chance of getting critted is significantly lowered because of that MP as well. And of course, specifically on Summer Castoria, because she is a frail berserker, she also has fairy eyes, increasing that critical resist chance up to 80%, basically making her not take crit damage for most of the cases, which is very good for a berserker character's survival. Now, the one gripe that a lot of people will bring up is that, oh, this might interfere with my attempt to overcharge my caster Castoria's MP, because obviously if you already have Solemn Defense on your entire team, caster Castoria cannot further apply Solemn Defense, which will have more than one hit and will last more than one turn. However, that is a very nitpicky statement and usually will not come into play, and Summer Castoria even has a built-in fix to that problem in the form of her skill 2 being able to directly give normal Castoria 2 extra stages of overcharge, allowing you to use their MP before Summer Castoria's MP to still get 3 hits, 3 turns worth of Solemn Defense, which is usually more than enough. Because of the Solemn Defense overflow though, I do recommend running Castoria plus Lady Avalon with Summer Castoria instead of running triple Castoria, despite how funny that team comp is. And of course we have to talk about Summer Castoria's amazing triple anti-trait MP. Threat to Humanity is a lot more prevalent amongst bosses and also no longer exclusive to foreigner class enemies, so I do think it is a lot more relevant in the boss killing section compared to when we talk about her ability to farm. And of course Anti-Divine and Anti-Chaotic is as prevalent as usual, and the fact that they are power mods, you know, attached to a character like Summer Castoria who has a kit that can supply herself with her own stars as well as Star Absorb, allows her to dish out massive amounts of damage if you are able to pull off a MP Brave Chain that also hits the anti-traits with critical damage. I kind of demonstrated it in my video where I soloed her against both Zeus and Beast Kama, especially Beast Kama because she hits double anti-trait against Beast Kama. Speaking of solos, all of these good, you know, survival effects allows Summer Castoria to also be a really good solo unit. Now, as a solo unit, the Solemn Defense every single turn is not nearly as good compared to when it is in a team because she's the only one getting hit, so usually it just shaves off 1/3 to half the damage every single turn because, you know, she can still consistently do MPAA almost every single turn. And of course, this also means that the 20% Fairy Eyes and the 20% crit chance down whenever she MPs comes into play even more when you're using her as a solo unit. And her skill 3's, you know, involt effect suddenly becomes pretty prevalent. I still wouldn't really save it for a crucial turn because of her instant access to hard defense to block off an MP, and also the fact that she's a berserker, so every single turn can potentially, you know, kill her, so you might as well use that skill through whenever you can. Overall, I think Summer Castoria is just nuts. She's so self-sufficient and so overtuned in a lot of her numbers and effects. I would have expected the crit up to only be 30% or the arts up or some of her skills to be cooldown 7, but none of that actually happened. And also the fact that she can give the entire team Solemn Defense on the fly whenever she MPs. I just think she's so blatantly broken that despite me not actually testing her out nearly as much as some other servants before I actually released the hot take video, I can pretty firmly tell you this character is just absolutely bonkers in 99% of the cases. She's also super flexible in multi-core farming. Obviously, you know, being a single target, a lot of times their farming isn't going to be nearly as relevant as AoEs, but still, you know, as a single target farmer, she's super flexible and can even support her team. I think if you really like her and, you know, there is one character you want to invest in to solve 99% of your problems and kill every single boss for you in the future, she's a super safe option to heavily invest in. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of stuff that can actually stop her in her tracks. Very much a banger of a servant and absolutely an S tier character, especially in challenge quests in my personal opinion. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and of course, best of luck to you for rolling for Summer Castoria. See you guys in the next one.